Hello, I'm Jamal. I'm 25 and I work in a small marketing company downtown. Not a fancy job or anything, but it's steady and I like the people I work with. I live in a simple apartment, drive an old Honda, and I guess I'd call myself pretty normal. Nothing special. Really, just trying to get by without making too many waves. I grew up in this little town and never really thought much about leaving. My whole life was right here. Family, friends, familiar streets. It was easy, predictable until Jessica came along. Jessica and I started dating about 2 years ago. Known her since high school though. We never talked much back then. She was popular, funny, and everyone liked her, whereas I mostly kept to myself. We connected again by chance at the grocery store one night, both reaching for the last tub of ice cream. It was a dumb, cheesy way to meet, but it worked. Talked for hours in the parking lot and 2 years later we were engaged. Jessica is the kind of girl everyone loves. She's beautiful but never tries too hard. Always smiling, always easygoing. We don't argue much, never really did with her. Things just make sense. She's safe, comfortable, and I love her for. Last weekend, we had our engagement party at her house. It was supposed to be casual, just close friends, family, good food and music in the backyard. Jessica's mom, Laura, insisted on hosting. She'd always been generous like that. Let me tell you about Laura. Laura was my English teacher back in high school, and she was one of the few teachers who ever really saw me. Back then, I wasn't exactly a star student. I did okay, kept my head down, got decent grades, but Laura made me feel like I had potential. She was one of those rare teachers who genuinely cared, the kind you never really forget. Even after high school, whenever I'd come over to see Laura and I would end up talking about books or movies or just life in general, she was classy, elegant, and thoughtful in a way that always made me feel important. She's probably the most graceful woman I've ever met. A woman who doesn't have to raise her voice because people listen anyway. I guess you could say I admired her. Anyway, the engagement party was going well. We had about 30 people, mostly family and friends. Jessica was busy, laughing with her cousins, and I was chatting with some guys from work when Laura walked over. She tapped me gently on the arm, smiling in that warm, familiar way she always did. "Jamal," she said softly, "can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure," I replied, not thinking anything of it. She led me into the kitchen, away from the chatter and music. I noticed something different about her expression, though I couldn't quite place it. Laura never looked nervous, but tonight there was an edge to her calmness, like she was hiding something behind those steady, gentle. "I wanted to tell you something." She began leaning slightly against the kitchen counter. She was wearing a simple navy blue dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She was effortlessly beautiful, the way older women sometimes are comfortable in their own skin, confident without trying. "What's up?" I asked lightly, assuming it was something about Jessica. Or maybe just party details. She hesitated, looking at the floor for a moment before lifting her gaze back to mine. "I've never told Jessica this, Jamal. But I haven't really told anyone. But you're going to be family soon, and I feel like you deserve to know the truth." Velma heart beat a little faster, confused. Laura never got this serious without reason. "Is something wrong?" Carefully. She took a slow, quiet breath and smiled softly, almost sadly. "Jessica's father and I aren't married anymore," she finally said. "We haven't been for a few years now." I stared at her. This wasn't at all what I'd expected to hear. I just seen him earlier standing with Jessica's uncles, laughing as if nothing had changed. "But why haven't you told her?" What? Shook her head slightly. "We both agreed it would be easier on her to just pretend for now. We didn't want her to feel like she'd lost her family, especially not at a time like this. She's been so happy since you two got together, Jamal. Neither of us wanted to ruin that." I didn't know what to say. Everything I'd believed about Jessica's family suddenly felt shaky, uncertain. "But why tell me now?" I finally asked. Laura looked away for a moment, thoughtful. Because I trust you, she said quietly. Jessica adores you and I can see why. You're good, Jamal. You're kind, and you deserve to know the truth. But please don't tell Jessica. Not yet. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of her trust pressing heavily on my shoulders. I won't, I promise softly. But I still don't understand. How did you manage to hide something like this for so long? Laura smiled sadly. People see what they want to see, she said gently. Sometimes it's easier to keep pretending than it is to face the truth. I guess we were both good at pretending. For a long moment, we stood quietly in the kitchen, distant laughter and music filtering in from the yard. Something about the intimacy of the moment. Laura sharing a secret she'd kept from everyone else made me feel oddly closer to her in a way I never expected. Laura placed a soft hand on my arm, squeezing gently. Thank you for listening, Jamal, she whispered. I knew you'd understand. She left the kitchen, her footsteps soft and graceful as always, leaving me alone with a head full of questions and a strange feeling deep inside my chest, one that I couldn't quite name yet. Returning to the party, everything suddenly felt different. Smiled when Jessica waved at me, but something inside me had shifted. Time I glanced toward Laura, I felt a tug of uncertainty, guilt, and something else. Something that scared me. As I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help wondering why Laura had chosen me to share her secret and why. Despite my best efforts, I couldn't get her voice out of my mind. I didn't sleep much that night. Kept thinking about Laura, about everything she'd said. Her voice echoed quietly through my mind. Trust you, Jamal. Jessica doesn't know yet. Please don't say anything. Jessica's father, James, had always seemed like a quiet man, distant but decent. He rarely spoke at family gatherings, usually just smiling politely, sipping his drink and leaving early. I always assumed that was just his personality. It never crossed my mind they'd been pretending all these years. Suddenly, every memory I had of them seemed slightly off, somehow less genuine. The next morning, Jessica cooked breakfast, her laughter filling our small kitchen. She had no clue. She looked so happy flipping pancakes and talking about wedding plans. It felt wrong keeping something like this from her, but I'd promised Laura I couldn't betray her trust. Not now. You okay, Jamal? Jessica asked suddenly, noticing how quiet I'd become. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Just tired from yesterday. Jessica grinned and kissed me on the cheek. You were amazing. Mom said you were a huge help, especially in the kitchen. Hearing Laura's name made my stomach tighten. She did? I asked quietly, looking away. Jessica nodded, smiling softly. She really likes you, you know. She always tells me how lucky I am. I looked down, pushing food around my plate. Yeah, she's great. Jessica laughed lightly. I swear sometimes it feels like Mom loves you even more than I do. She said it jokingly, but her words lingered heavy in the air between us. After breakfast, Jessica left to meet her friends for coffee. Alone. Again, my thoughts went straight back to Laura. Why had she confided in me of all people? Why choose me, the guy married her daughter? I was supposed to be part of their family soon, not someone holding secrets behind Jessica's back. Later that afternoon, I drove aimlessly around town. I ended up at the park sitting alone on an old wooden bench, staring at nothing in particular. My phone buzzed suddenly, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Laura. The simple text, "Thank you again, Jamal, for understanding." I stared at her words for a long moment. My fingers hovered over the screen, unsure how to reply. Eventually, I typed, "Of course, I'm here if you need anything." She didn't respond, and I couldn't help feeling strangely disappointed. The next few days passed quietly. Jessica noticed my distracted mood a few more times, but assumed I was just stressed about the wedding. She kept telling me it would all be perfect, and I let her believe that was my worry. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about Laura, about her confession, about the quiet sadness I'd seen in her eyes. That Friday evening, Jessica went out with her bridesmaids. I was alone at home when Laura called. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Jamal," she said, quietly. "I was wondering if you're free tonight. There's something else I'd like to talk to you about." It is tightened instantly. "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where should we meet? Maybe just come by." "My house," Laura suggested gently. "Jessica won't be home till late." Agreed, feeling guilty for reasons I couldn't fully explain. It was just a conversation. I reminded myself Laura needing someone to talk to. But I knew deep down there was more. Why else would my heart beat so fast when I heard her voice? When I arrived at Laura's house, the porch light was already on. She opened the door, smiling softly, wearing a casual sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back loosely. It was strange. Seeing her so relaxed, not the elegant, put-together woman I knew from all those family events. We sat in the living room, quiet for a few moments before she finally spoke. "I'm sorry if this is awkward for you, Jamal," she started, gently. "But you're the only one I can really talk to." "I don't mind," I said, quickly, trying to sound more confident than I felt. She sighed softly, shaking her head. "I feel guilty about putting this burden on you, but I don't have anyone else. James and I agreed not to involve Jessica or anyone else until after your wedding." I hesitated before asking, "Why me, though? You could have told one of your friends." Laura smiled faintly, looking down at her hands. "You're different, Jamal. Always been someone I respected deeply. Even when you were a kid, I knew I could trust you." My heartbeat quickened slightly. "I just wish Jessica knew," I admitted quietly. "I feel awful keeping this from her." "I know," Laura whispered, reaching out to gently touch my arm. Her hand was warm, comforting, but something about her touch made my chest tighten even more. "But Jessica isn't like you. She's strong, yes, but emotionally fragile. I don't want her carrying this pain. Not yet." I looked up, meeting Laura's steady gaze. "Does it hurt you?" I asked softly, keeping the secret, pretending everything's fine. She hesitated, looking away for a moment. "Yes," she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. "More than anyone knows. Pretending to be happy is exhausting." Without thinking, I reached over and gently squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry. You're going through this, Laura." She looked back at me, her eyes glistening slightly. "It's strange," she said, softly. "You're marrying my daughter, but sometimes it feels like you're the only one who truly understands me." Swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. "I just want you to be okay," I whispered awkwardly, not knowing what else to say. Laura smiled softly, sadly. "I will be eventually, but right now, just having someone who listens, who sees me is enough." We sat quietly for a long moment, neither of us speaking. The silence was filled with things we weren't saying, things we couldn't admit even to ourselves. Eventually, Laura pulled her hand away, gently breaking the quiet spell between us. "You should go," she whispered. "Jessica will be home soon." I stood up reluctantly, feeling the strange closeness fade. "If you need anything, I know," she interrupted softly, smiling faintly. "Thank you, Jamal." Walking to my car, I glanced back at her, standing in the doorway watching me go. As I drove away, my thoughts raced. I knew this was dangerous territory, but I couldn't deny the strange sense of connection I'd felt tonight. Something deeper than respect, deeper than friendship. And as guilty as I felt, part of me knew this was only the beginning of something I didn't fully understand yet. After that evening at Laura's house, things didn't quite go back to normal. Not for me, anyway. Couldn't shake the feeling of her hand resting softly on mine, or the sadness behind her eyes as she'd whispered those quiet confessions. I told myself I was just being supportive, just trying to help someone I cared about. But deep down, I knew something else was happening, something I wasn't ready to. Over the next few weeks, Laura started texting me more frequently. It was subtle at first, short messages, asking about my day or if Jessica was around, innocent, harmless conversations, but slowly they became more personal. She would ask me what I thought about her decisions about her future, About. Like, she'd always preface it the same way. I just need a man's perspective of Jamal, someone mature enough to give honest advice. Every time I read those words, I'd feel a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. Why did she value my opinion so much? And why did I look forward to those messages even though I knew I shouldn't? One evening, Jessica was working late and I was home alone. When Laura called, her voice was soft, almost hesitant as she spoke. Hey, Jamal, do you have a minute? I need your advice again. I sat down on the couch, feeling my pulse quicken. Of course. What's it going on? She sighed gently. James wants us to pretend a little longer, at least until after your wedding. He thinks it'll be easier for Jessica. I hesitated, not sure what to. Do you think that's a good idea? I honestly don't know, she admitted, quietly. That's why I'm calling you. Would it be wrong to keep pretending? Jamal, do you think I'm hurting her more by protecting her? I paused, feeling the weight of the situation again. You should do what's best for you, Laura, I finally said, choosing my words carefully. Jessica's strong. She can handle it. There was silence for a moment, and I worried I'd said something wrong. You really think so? She finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. I do, I said softly. And no matter what, I'll be here to help you both. Laura let out a soft sigh. Thank you, Jamal. You don't know how much that means to me. After we hung up, I sat quietly, feeling a strange ache deep in my chest. I knew I should tell Jessica, but every time I tried, I remembered the trust Laura had placed in me. It felt impossible to betray her confidence. The conversations kept happening. More texts, occasional calls, casual meetings. For coffee. Each time, the distance between us grew smaller, our conversations more personal. We weren't just talking about Jessica or their divorce anymore. We were talking about our lives, our dreams, even our regrets. One afternoon, we met at a quiet cafe outside town. Laura wore a simple white blouse and jeans, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She looked relaxed, younger somehow, and when she smiled at me, something in my chest tightened unexpectedly. You know, she began softly sipping her. I never imagined I'd be here discussing my life choices with someone your age. I laughed awkwardly, suddenly, self-conscious. Sorry if I'm not exactly an expert on relationships. Laura reached out gently, placing her hand over mine on the table. Don't underestimate yourself, Jamal. You're wiser than most men I've known. My heart jumped slightly at her touch. I knew it was innocent, just a gesture of comfort. But it felt different somehow. Warmer, more intimate. I just wish I'd made different choices, she continued. Her voice quieter now. Maybe things wouldn't have gotten so complicated. I hesitated before speaking. You can't blame yourself for everything, Laura. Sometimes life just happens. So, up her eyes, meeting mine, gentle and searching. You're always so understanding. Jessica's lucky she found. I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling guilty again. Maybe I'm the lucky one, said quietly, looking down at her hand, still touching mine. Laura slowly withdrew her hand, looking slightly embarrassed. I'm sorry, she murmured softly. I shouldn't be burdening you with all this. It's okay, I said, quickly, trying to ignore the sudden emptiness where her hand had been. I want to help. Laura smiled softly, but her eyes remained uncertain. I just don't want you to feel obligated, Jamal. You have your own life, your own happiness, so to focus on. I shook my head gently. Talking to you doesn't feel like an obligation, I admitted quietly. I like it. She looked surprised, but, please, really? Yeah, I said softly. You're easy to talk to, Laura, and you're honest. I appreciate that. She smiled warmly again, but this time there was something else in her eyes, something gentle and vulnerable. Sometimes I wish I'd met someone like you years ago, she said, her voice barely audible. Her words hung between us, heavy with meaning. We both sat quietly, neither of us knowing what to say next. Finally, Laura broke the silence. We should go, she said, softly, standing slowly. Jessica will be home soon, right? I nodded, standing up reluctantly. Yeah, you're right. We walked together toward the parking lot, the silence between us comfortable but charged. At her car, Laura paused, turning to face me again. Jamal, she said gently, looking up at me. Seriously, I want you to know how grateful I am for your advice, for your friendship, for everything. I smiled softly. You don't have to thank me, Laura. I'm glad I can be here for you. She hesitated for a second, then leaned in, slightly, hugging me gently. Her touch felt warm, comforting, and I couldn't help but hold her close for just a moment too long. When we finally stepped back, our eyes met briefly, and the softness in her gaze made my heart beat faster. Take care, Jamal, she whispered softly. And please don't ever change. As I drove home that evening and realized something had shifted inside me, Laura wasn't just Jessica's mom, wasn't just someone I respected anymore. She was someone I looked forward to seeing, someone I felt connected to in a way I'd never expected. That realization scared me more than anything. I was supposed to marry Jessica, soon build a life with her, not find myself feeling strangely drawn to her mother. Yet, despite everything, I couldn't deny it anymore. Laura had become more than just a friend, and deep down I knew this feeling was far from over. After that afternoon at the cafe, I knew I had to put some distance between myself and her. I felt guilty every time I thought of Jessica, innocent and trusting, busy planning a future with me. That suddenly seemed less clear. I had to do something before these strange feelings spiraled out of control. So I began to avoid Laura. Not obviously, of course, just small things. When she texted me, I'd reply briefly, politely. When she called, I'd let it ring, texting later that I'd been busy. I skipped out on dinners at Jessica's house, using work or fatigue as excuses. The distance would make these feelings fade, restore my focus, remind me of who I was supposed to be. But it didn't work that. Instead, the more I distanced myself, the more I could feel the quiet sadness creeping into Laura's messages. Her text became shorter, filled with apologies, always ending with something polite like, I understand. Take care. I imagined her sitting alone feeling rejected, and it hurt more deeply than I had expected. Jessica noticed my mood changes. One night after dinner, she reached for my hand, squeezing gently. You okay, Jamal? She asked softly. Seemed distant lately. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a small smile. Just stressed about the wedding. She nodded, concern filling her eyes. I just want you to be happy. That's all I ever wanted. I squeezed her hand back, feeling another surge of guilt. Jessica deserved someone better, someone who wasn't hiding secrets. But what could I say? Telling her about Laura felt impossible now, too painful, too complicated. Late one night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed quietly on the bedside table. I reached over, expecting a meaningless notification, but my heart jumped when I saw Laura's name on the screen. Her message was simple, quiet, and heavy with unspoken pain. I'm sorry if I've complicated things. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I stared at the screen, my throat tight. Laura didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve to feel alone. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure how to respond. Finally, I typed slowly. You didn't. I've just been trying to do the right thing, she replied quickly, her words hitting me harder than I'd imagined. I understand. I'll give you space, but please don't blame yourself. This is on me. I felt a pang of sadness. Laura was shouldering the blame, but I knew I was equally responsible. Every instinct told me to let her go. Let this die quietly. But something inside rebelled at the thought of losing her completely. I sat up in bed, my heart beating faster. Long hesitation, I typed again, letting honesty win. Maybe we should talk face to face. A pause, then her answer. Are you sure? That typed my heart hammering. Tomorrow. She agreed, and we planned to meet at her place after Jessica left for work. The next day dragged by painfully slow. At work, my mind kept drifting, every thought circling back to Laura. to the sadness in her voice, the uncertainty in my chest. When evening finally came, I drove slowly to Laura's house, anxiety and anticipation making my palms sweat. Laura opened the door quietly, dressed simply in a soft gray sweater. Looked tired, red-rimmed like she'd been crying. We stood silently for a moment, just looking at each other. Finally, she stepped back, letting me inside. "Thank you for coming, Jamal," she said softly, not meeting my eyes. "I wasn't sure you would actually show up. I had to," I admitted quietly. "I didn't want you to think this was all your fault." Laura sighed gently, guiding me into the living room. We sat down awkwardly on opposite sides of the couch, the distance between us suddenly painful. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, breaking the silence. "I never wanted this to happen. You're marrying my daughter, and I'm just complicating your life." Leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Laura, you're not alone in this. I'm responsible too. I should have been stronger." She shook her head, smiling sadly. "You've done nothing wrong. You're a good man, Jamal. Better than I deserve." I looked away, feeling my throat tighten again. "I don't know what's happening," I admitted softly. "I never expected to feel this way." She looked up sharply, surprise flickering across her face. "Feel what way?" I hesitated, swallowing hard before answering honestly. "Close to too close. It scares me, Laura." Her expression softened in understanding, filling her eyes. "It scares me too," she admitted quietly. "But I can't deny how important you've become to me." I closed my eyes briefly, overwhelmed by her honesty. "We can't do this," I whispered, painfully. "It's not fair to Jessica." "I know," Laura agreed softly, her voice barely audible. "But losing you completely, it hurts, Jamal." Without thinking, I moved closer, reaching out to gently take her hand. Her fingers trembled slightly in mine. "We won't lose each other," I promised softly. "We'll figure this out somehow. I just can't abandon Jessica." Laura squeezed my hand gently. "I wouldn't ask you to," she whispered. "But please don't shut me out. Even if it's just friendship, I need you, Jamal." We sat quietly, holding hands, in silent agreement, unsure what our future held. I felt torn, desperately, wanting to protect Jessica's happiness, but equally desperate not to lose Laura's presence in my life. Eventually, we stood up reluctantly, knowing Jessica would soon be home. At the doorway, Laura paused, looking up at me again, her eyes searching mine. "Can we really stay just friends?" she asked softly. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But we can try." She nodded slowly, accepting my words. "Then we'll try." As I walked to my car, I glanced back once. Laura stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the soft glow from inside her house, watching me with gentle sadness. I waved slowly, and she raised her hand slightly, a quiet goodbye, lingering between us. Driving home, I knew this wasn't the end. Our attempt at friendship felt fragile, uncertain, but at least we weren't losing each other entirely. I knew it wasn't perfect, it was risky and complicated, but something about Laura made me believe it might still be worth it. And that realization scared and comforted me in equal measure. I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over, and the hardest decisions were yet to come. A few weeks passed quietly after that evening at Laura's house. We maintained a careful, respectful distance. It was safer that way, better for everyone, especially Jessica. But deep down, both knew we were fooling ourselves. Every casual glance, every small smile when our eyes met, told me the connection between us was still there, unspoken and dangerous. Then came the weekend. Jessica had to leave town for a work conference. She asked if I'd be okay staying alone, kissing me gently before she left, never knowing the turmoil beneath my calm exterior. As I watched her drive away, a strange, restless anxiety settled inside me. The same afternoon, Laura texted me. I stared at her message longer than I should have. "Jamal, I know this might be a lot to ask, but a few things around the house need fixing. Would you mind helping?" I knew what I should have replied. Something polite, something safe, an excuse, but my fingers typed it almost automatically. Of course, come by this evening. When I arrived at Laura's house, she greeted me quietly, smiling softly. Thank you for coming, Jamal. I know you're busy. It's no trouble, I said gently, trying to keep things casual. Jessica's away, so my evening's open. Laura nodded slowly, glancing away briefly before leading me inside. We spent the next hour fixing little things around the house. A squeaky door hinge, a loose cabinet handle, a flickering lamp. Small tasks, but it gave us an excuse to avoid deeper conversation. When we finally finished, Laura offered a faint smile. You're very good at this. You know, Jessica is lucky she'll have someone handy around. I laughed softly, a little embarrassed. It's nothing special. She paused, watching me thoughtfully. Would you like a glass of wine before you go, just to thank you properly? I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Sure, that sounds good. Laura poured us each a glass of deep red wine, and we moved to the living room, sitting quietly on the couch. The atmosphere felt comfortable at first, but gradually the silence grew heavier, filled with everything we weren't saying. Finally, Laura broke the quiet. You know, Jamal, sometimes I wonder how different life would have been if I'd made better choices. I looked up, noticing the gentle sadness in her eyes. What do you mean? She sighed softly, swirling the wine gently in her glass. My marriage was never as happy as everyone believed. James was never cruel or bad, just indifferent. We stayed together out of habit, out of fear of disappointing Jessica. But for years I felt lonely and visible. Her honesty surprised me. My heart tightened painfully as I listened. Without thinking, I reached out gently, touching her hand. I'm sorry you went through that, Laura. No one deserves to feel lonely. Her eyes softened as she looked down at our hands, fingers gently entwined. Her voice was barely audible when she whispered, "Why couldn't I meet someone like you years ago?" My pulse quickened at her words. Everything I tried to suppress suddenly came flooding back, overwhelming me. Laura was close now, closer than she'd ever been. Her gentle scent filled my senses, her hand warm and soft in mine. Laura, I whispered uncertainly, feeling my self-control slipping away. Shouldn't. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned slightly closer, eyes never leaving mine. I know, she breathed softly. But for once, Jamal, can we just admit how we feel? My heart pounded fiercely as I fought a silent battle within myself. Loyalty to Jessica warred violently with my deep, undeniable feelings for Laura. I knew I should end this before it went any further, but my body refused to move. Every fiber of my being yearned to stay. Laura, I said again, voice trembling slightly. Jessica, she interrupted gently, eyes filled with quiet sadness. Jessica deserves better than lies. And so do we. Even if it's only for tonight. I just want honesty. I need to know I'm not imagining this. You're not admitted painfully, unable to hold back any longer. I feel it glistened softly. Relief and sadness mixed together. Slowly she leaned into me, resting her head gently against my shoulder. Her closeness felt natural, comforting, even as my guilt rose. Sharply, I've tried so hard to resist this, Laura murmured softly, her breath warm against my skin. But being with you feels like finally breathing again. Her words broke down my last defenses. I gently wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her close. We sat quietly, neither of us daring to move, afraid to shatter this fragile moment. Eventually, Laura lifted her head slightly, her face inches from mine. But shouldn't want this, she whispered softly, her gaze locked onto mine. But I can't help it, Jamal. You made me feel alive again. I felt myself lean in instinctively, our lips almost touching, before reality crashed back into me. I pulled away sharply, heart aching. But can't do this to Jessica, I said painfully, standing up quickly. It's not right. Laura stood slowly, eyes filled with understanding and regret. You're right, she whispered. I'm sorry, Jamal. I shouldn't have. I shook my head, feeling tears sting my eyes. It's not your fault, Laura. It's mine. Wanted it. I want you, but it's still wrong. Laura nodded sadly, stepping back slightly. Then you should go. Moved reluctantly toward the door, feeling each step heavier than the last. At the threshold, I turned back once. More, my voice barely audible. I'm sorry, Laura, I whispered softly. Smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. Don't apologize. I'll never regret being honest with you. Drove away, my chest felt unbearably heavy, my thoughts spiraling in confusion. I'd nearly crossed an irreversible line tonight, driven by feelings I never imagined possible. Yet beneath the guilt and pain I couldn't deny how alive Laura had made me feel. It was a cruel irony. Finally experiencing real passion and connection, but at the wrong time with the wrong person. Back home, alone in the quiet emptiness of our apartment, lay awake in bed, haunted by Laura's soft voice, by the memory of her warmth beside me. I knew I'd done the right thing by pulling away. But the ache in my heart told me clearly that right or wrong, my feelings weren't going anywhere. As the night deepened around me, one painful question lingered, refusing to leave my mind. If I truly loved Jessica, why had I allowed myself to fall so deeply for her mother? And how would I ever find my way back? The days following that night at Laura's house, guilt consumed me. I couldn't look Jessica in the eye without feeling a wave of shame washing over me. Every smile she offered, every gentle touch, felt undeserved. And yet, I couldn't tell her the truth, not without shattering her heart completely. And I both seemed to silently agree that we needed space. She stopped texting and calling. I avoided places I knew she might be. The closeness we'd shared now felt dangerous, like a fragile secret that threatened to destroy everything. But Jessica noticed one evening while preparing dinner, she watched me quietly from across the kitchen. Could feel her eyes studying me, uncertain and worried. Jamal, she finally said, breaking the silence. Are we okay? Looked up quickly, forcing a small, reassuring smile. Of course. Why wouldn't we be? She hesitated, frowning slightly. You've been distant lately. Ever since my trip, actually. Did something happen? I felt my heart clenched painfully. I'm just stressed. Lied softly. Work and wedding planning, it's a lot. Jessica stepped closer, wrapping her arms around me gently. I just want us to be honest with each other. You'd tell me if something was really wrong, right? I held her tightly, feeling another stab of guilt. Whispered silently, hating myself for the lie. The hardest part was knowing I'd have to see Laura again. We had a family dinner planned at Jessica's parents' house that weekend, a small, intimate gathering. Jessica was excited, talking eagerly about how good it would be for all of us to relax together. But for me, every mention of that night felt like another nail in the coffin. When the evening arrived, my nerves were raw. Laura greeted us at the door with a polite, careful smile, her eyes meeting mine briefly before quickly looking away. She seemed composed, but beneath the surface, I sensed she felt as guilty and conflicted as I did. Dinner was pleasant enough, but every exchange felt strained, cautious. Laura spoke softly, barely making eye contact with me, focusing instead on Jessica. But even Jessica seemed to notice something off, glancing between us with subtle concern. Halfway through the meal, Jessica's phone rang, a quick call from her friend. She excused herself briefly, stepping outside onto the patio, leaving Laura and me alone at the table. The silence felt deafening. Laura finally broke it, her voice quiet and heavy. Jamal, she said softly, still not looking directly at me. I know what you're thinking. You're right. We can't continue this. Swallowed hard, feeling relief mingled with sadness. Laura, she interrupted gently, finally meeting my gaze. Her eyes were filled with pain and resignation. We both know this has to stop, but for what it's worth, you've reminded me of what happiness feels like. Her words twisted painfully in my chest. Realized then just how deeply I'd hurt her. How deeply we'd both hurt each other by allowing ourselves this fleeting closeness. "I'm so sorry," I whispered quietly, my voice breaking slightly. "I never wanted you to feel this way." Laura reached out briefly, touching my hand. Gentle, comforting, and heartbreakingly brief. "You don't need to apologize, Jamal. This wasn't just you. I knew better." I stared at her, feeling my chest tighten further. "I just wish things were different." Nodded softly, smiling sadly. "But Jessica deserves the truth, and she deserves you." Before I could reply, Jessica returned cheerful and unaware, chatting lightly about plans for the rest of the weekend. Laura resumed smiling politely, pretending once again that everything was normal. But behind her gentle facade, I saw a quiet loneliness, a sadness that made me ache with guilt. Later that night back home, I lay awake beside Jessica, my mind racing. I knew Laura was right. This had to end fully and completely, no matter how much it hurt. Jessica trusted me. She believed in us. Betraying her was never something I thought myself capable of. And yet, I'd come dangerously close. For the next several days, I immersed myself completely in work and wedding preparations, desperate for distraction. Laura and I didn't speak again, not even small texts. Our silence felt both necessary and painful, a constant reminder of what we'd almost lost ourselves to. One evening, Jessica curled up beside me on the couch, gently laying her head against my shoulder. "Mom's been acting strange lately," she said softly. "Quiet, withdrawn." Noticed? My heart quickened slightly. I lied carefully. "Maybe she's just stressed about the wedding." Jessica frowned slightly. "I don't know. She just seems sad, lonely maybe. I worry about her." Her words twisted inside me, knowing all too well the cause of Laura's sadness. "She'll be okay," I whispered, hoping desperately it was. "Maybe you should spend more time with her. She probably just misses you." Jessica nodded thoughtfully, seemingly reassured. "You're right. I'll talk to her tomorrow." I kissed her forehead, softly, silently, promising myself that I would never again betray her trust. Couldn't bear to see the confusion or pain in her eyes, knowing I'd put it there. That night, when Jessica was asleep, I quietly got out of bed, unable to calm my restless thoughts. Standing by the window, looking out into the silent night, I picked up my phone, hesitating briefly before typing a simple message to Laura. "You're right. We can't do this anymore. But please know I'm here for you as family, as a friend." Laura replied a few minutes later, her message short, but filled with quiet understanding. "Thank you, Jamal. That means more than you'll ever." I stared at her words for a long moment, feeling a deep sadness settle over me. I knew we'd made the right decision, that we had narrowly avoided a disaster that could have destroyed everything. But beneath the relief, beneath the guilt, I couldn't help mourning what we'd lost, the brief, genuine connection that had made us both feel alive. I returned quietly to bed, lying awake, listening to Jessica's soft breathing beside me. I realized then that no matter how hard I tried, no matter how sincerely I loved Jessica, I'd never forget the fragile happiness I'd found and lost with Laura. And that realization scared me more deeply than anything else. A few weeks passed, but nothing felt easier. The heaviness in my chest remained a constant reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I stood to lose. Jessica continued making wedding plans, her excitement genuine. Yet, every detail felt increasingly suffocating. I knew I couldn't keep pretending. One rainy afternoon, I finally sat Jessica down in our living room. Her eyes widened with concern as I struggled to find the right words. "Jessica?" I began softly, barely meeting her gaze. "I think we need to postpone the wedding." She went silent for a long moment, confusion spreading slowly across her face. What's wrong?" Jamal, did I do something?" "No." I quickly interrupted, my voice breaking slightly. "It's not you, it's me. I just need some time. I'm confused." Her expression shifted from confusion to hurt, then finally settled on sadness. She nodded slowly, her voice barely a whisper. Is it someone else? Her question hit me hard, twisting painfully inside my chest. I didn't lie, but I couldn't fully admit the truth either. I just need time, I repeated quietly, desperate for her to understand. Please, Jessica. She didn't push further, but tears filled her eyes as she quietly left the room. Watching her walk away felt like a knife twisting deeper, but knew I had no other choice. 2 days later, I packed a small bag and left town. I didn't tell anyone exactly where I was going, just that I needed space to think. Driving away from the familiar streets felt both painful and necessary, as though distance might offer clarity I couldn't find at home. I spent those weeks alone in a quiet cabin by the coast, surrounded only by the rhythm of waves and the endless empty sky. Each day, I walked the shoreline, replaying every moment, every decision, trying to untangle the mess of emotions that haunted me. One afternoon, a small envelope arrived at the cabin, neatly addressed in Laura's familiar handwriting. My heart quickened as I opened it, finding a brief note inside. Dear Jamal, I know you needed space, and I'm sorry for everything that happened. You deserve happiness above all else, and I never intended to complicate your life. Take your time to find your best. I'll understand whatever you decide. Always, Laura. Her words left me sitting in silence for hours, feeling both comforted and tormented by her kindness. Laura deserved happiness, too, perhaps more than anyone. And yet, I knew choosing her meant breaking Jessica's heart, something I could never forgive myself for. Days turned into weeks, and I slowly began to understand something painful but important. This decision wasn't about who I loved more. It was about who I wanted to become. About responsibility, duty, passion, and sacrifice. Choice came with pain, each path uncertain. Eventually, I realized running away wouldn't help anymore. Had to face this head-on, no matter how difficult. When I finally returned home, dusk was settling softly over the town. Street lights flickered gently as I drove slowly through familiar streets, my heart beating anxiously. I parked near the intersection between Laura and Jessica's houses, stepping slowly onto the quiet sidewalk. Standing between those two homes, I felt the weight of my choice pressing heavily upon me. To my left was Jessica, steady, loving, innocent. Choosing her meant stability, comfort, the life I'd always planned. To my right was Laura, the woman who had unexpectedly awakened something deep and passionate inside me, something I never knew existed. I stood frozen in the evening air, cool against my skin, memories flooding my mind. Jessica represented the life I'd always envisioned, predictable, safe, happy. But after everything that had happened, could we ever regain what we'd lost? Could I truly be the person she deserved? Laura, on the other hand, represented risk, passion, uncertainty. Our bond was powerful, undeniable, but was it sustainable? Or would choosing her only lead to the more heartbreak and pain for everyone involved? Closed my eyes briefly, breathing deeply. How could I possibly make this choice? Jessica's house was warm lights glowing softly through familiar windows. Inside waited security, love, and forgiveness. If only I could let go of the guilt that now bound me so tightly. Laura's house sat quiet, gently illuminated, and somehow lonely. Behind its walls lay passion, connection, and a depth of feeling I'd never imagined possible. But choosing Laura meant crossing a line I could never uncross, hurting Jessica beyond measure. Minutes stretched painfully as I stood there trapped in an agonizing limbo. I knew this decision would define my life, shaping every moment that followed. My heart pounded heavily, each beat echoing my confusion and fear. What was love truly? Was it comfort and loyalty? Or was it passion and connection? And which was worth sacrificing for the other? The sky darkened above me, stars beginning to shine softly, indifferent to my struggle. The truth was neither path was without pain. Either choice would come at a cost. Hurting someone I deeply cared about. In that quiet moment, I finally understood the cruelty of love. Not the joy it brought, but the impossible decisions it forced us to make. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I realized there was no easy answer, no clear path forward. By it was my heart torn and uncertain, and the knowledge that whichever direction I chose, I would carry the weight of this decision forever. Slowly, I took one step forward, then another, feeling the night close gently around me. But even as I began to move, my destination remained uncertain. My heart caught painfully between two truths, two loves, two lies. And as I walked, I knew that no matter which house I chose, a part of me would forever remain standing right here in this moment, caught between happiness and duty, passion and responsibility, never truly free of the impossible choice I'd faced. The night deepened, and I continued moving forward, knowing only that my heart would never fully belong to one home. The story of Jamal, Jessica, and Laura unveils a heart-wrenching life lesson. Love can be both a source of profound connection and an agonizing force that demands impossible choices. Jamal's unexpected bond with Laura, built on trust and shared vulnerability, awakened a passion he never anticipated. Yet, it clashed painfully with his commitment to Jessica. This tale teaches us that love is not always clear-cut. It can pull us in conflicting directions, forcing us to weigh loyalty against desire, duty against passion. Jamal's struggle highlights the courage it takes to confront our true feelings, even when they risk hurting those we care about most. His decision to step back, though excruciating, underscores the importance of honesty with ourselves and others when navigating life's moral complexities. This story reminds us to cherish the connections that make us feel alive, but to tread carefully when they threaten to unravel the lives we've built. It's a call to reflect on our own choices, to embrace empathy, and to seek clarity amid emotional turmoil. Have you ever faced a choice between heart and duty? Share your experiences in the comments. We'd love to hear how you navigated life's tough decisions. If this story stirred your emotions, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join our community. Your support keeps these powerful stories alive. So, let's explore the complexities of love and life together.